In the Brazil Salvador South mission, the church hasn't been there for too long. There are a couple cities that had the church for a bit more than 30 years, but the first area I served in only had the church for 9 years when I got there, and the second area that I was in had only had the church for 2 years when I got there. The last area that I served in was one of the areas that had had the church for about 30 or so years. It was one of the first cities that got it in the whole state. And a lot of the people there, they are very religious. They like talking about God. They like talking about Jesus. They like talking about religion. And a lot of them go to a variety of different Christian churches. The problem is a lot of them like talking about God and Jesus and religion and everything, but they're not always that willing to make commitments to do anything. They say they will, but then they won't. The closest temple to my mission was the Recife temple, which was about 24 hours away by bus. But now the temple is being built in Rio, and that one will be a lot closer. As soon as that one's built, that's the one that everybody from that mission will go to. So since the church is fairly new in this mission, there aren't very many stakes. I think it's a pretty big area, but there's about, if I'm remembering correctly, 3 or 4 stakes and then 1 district. And it depends on the area that you're in. Some of the wards will have, a pretty good attendance, maybe like 100, 150 people. And then I've also been places where it wasn't even a branch, it was just a little group. And sometimes you have 2 people and sometimes you have 25 and you never really know how many will be there. And yeah, it's just pretty interesting. There's a lot of really good members. The good thing there is that when you get a good member, they stay a good member. And they'll commit to things, they'll go to church, and they're all super willing to help out and to help other people come to church also. One of the most effective ways to meet people is just talking to everybody on the street. People keep their doors open, people are out on the street all the time, walking around, sitting around outside. So if you try knocking doors, it's not always the most effective because people aren't always home. But if you just talk to people on the street, then you'll do pretty well. There was one whole transfer that I went without knocking a single door because I just talked to people on the street. And my companion and I together got a lot of contacts every week. We got about 200 a week, and that's just talking to people on the street. So that's a pretty effective way to talk to people. It also depends on the city you're in. Some cities aren't quite as open, so people are inside their houses, and then you do have to knock doors. But also, I find a good way to find people is to talk with the members and find their friends and just prepare a simple little message that's not very scary or threatening about the church. It's just a nice, simple message about what we believe and present it to the members first. And then after you present it to the members, ask if there's any friends that they'd be willing to invite over to hear the message or that we could go to share that message. I had a companion and I that did that around Christmas time. We prepared a little Christmas message just about Christmas, the purpose of Christmas, about Jesus Christ and his birth. And we didn't really get into the scary stuff, mentioning baptism or anything yet, because we just wanted to get people to hear about the church. And we got so many referrals from members during those few weeks that we were doing that Christmas message. So that was really helpful. And also, something that I think that I would do differently if I was going back again is I'd really make sure that the investigators that I was teaching, that they were actually following up on their commitments. Because a lot of people there, they'll make a commitment and they won't follow through with it, and it just wastes your time if you keep going back and trying to recommit them to the same thing, because if they really want the gospel and if they really want to change, then they'll accept your commitment. But a lot of people don't, and it can be a waste of time if you just keep sitting around with people who don't want to change. So yeah, I'd say just talk to lots of people everywhere you can, on the street, in their houses, in the grocery store, and just, I don't know, be happy and friendly because they like that there. I got into the mission field in January of 2014, and I left in June of 2015. The first city I served in was called Teixeira de Freitas, and I was there for about 4.5 months. And then I went to a tiny little city called Buerarema. Not very many people know about it, even people within the state that live there. It's pretty teeny tiny. I was there for about 6 months. And then I went to a city called Vitoria de Conquista. And that city is pretty large, and it's a lot more urbanized than some of the other cities in that state. And I was there for the rest of my mission. It was close to, I don't know, 7 or 8 months, I think. Yeah, all those missions were in the state of Bahia. The Salvador South mission is the southern half of the state of Bahia. It goes from the capital, Salvador, down to the southern half of the state. And the Salvador mission goes from Salvador up to the northern half of the state.